Good evening and welcome to News Tonight, where we get you the biggest news and events from across India and the world. I'm Tina Jha. Let's take a look at what's making headlines at this hour. NPAs hampered economic growth in 2017, not demonetization, says NITI Aayog Vice Chairman Rajivkumar. Also blames previous RBI Governor Rajan's policies for the decline in growth. Rupee falls to a historic low of 71.21 against the US dollar as concerns over rising crude oil prices and trade war tensions continue. Prices of petrol and diesel also at all-time high. Aiming to regulate online sale of medicines, the Health Ministry proposes draft rules on sale of drugs by e-pharmacies. Sale of tranquilizers, psychotropic drugs and narcotics won't be allowed. And India and Cyprus signed 2 MOUs after meeting between their presidents. President Kovind thanks Cyprus for backing India's membership bids for UNSC and NSG. Also invites Cypriots to invest in India. NITI Aayog Vice Chairman Rajivkumar has said that demonetization did not slow down the economy. Blaming non-performing assets of banks for the slowdown in the economy, Kumar said that the post-demonetization slowdown in 6 quarters, starting from the last quarter of 2015-16, was just a continuation of a declining trend. He also blamed former RBI Governor Rajan's policies for the rise in NPAs. Rajan had devised a new mechanism to identify stressed NPAs. Kumar further elaborated that when the Modi government came to office, NPAs stood at about 4 lakh crore rupees. But by the middle of 2017, it had risen to 10.5 lakh crore rupees, and that this was largely due to the policies adopted under Rajan. Kumar said there was no conclusive proof of a link between the economic slowdown and demonetization. India's economy grew at 8.2% rate in April to June this year, reclaiming its position as the fastest growing major global economy this year.
When this government came into office, that figure was about 4 lakh crores. It rose to 10.5 lakh crore by the middle of 2017. And because under the previous governor, Mr. Rajan, they had instituted new mechanisms to identify stressed and non-performing assets, and these continue to grow up, which is why the banking sector stopped giving credit to the industry. In fact, in some cases like the medium and small scale industry, their credit actually shrank. It was a negative growth. Never had been seen such a continuous and persistent year upon year deleveraging of credit. Now, this is the cause for the slowdown of growth.
The rupee crashed to yet another record low of 71.21 against the US dollar on Monday, amid concerns over rising crude oil prices and trade war tensions. Benchmark Brent crude oil was trading at $78 per barrel. The Reserve Bank of India has recently pulled several moves to support the rupee, including raising interest rates twice, with the last one in August. This to preempt a currency fall as the global trade war escalates. Meanwhile, benchmark Nifty fell sharply in late trade, down 98 points to 11,582.35, led by sharp sell-off, mainly in FMCG, banking and energy, amid negative global cues. And BSE Sensex also closed about 333 points down, posting 4th straight session fall due to widespread selling and the rupee falling. And petrol and diesel prices have also touched their highest levels, mainly due to dramatic fall in rupee and a sharp rise in crude oil rates. Petrol price in Delhi rose to a record 79 rupees 15 paise a litre, and diesel climbed to a fresh high of 71 rupees 15 paise, according to price notification of state-owned fuel retailers. This follows a 31 paise per litre hike in prices. Prices in Delhi are the cheapest in all metros and most state capitals due to lower sales tax or VAT. Since the 16th of August, Petrol prices have risen by over 2 rupees per litre. Diesel prices, on the other hand, have risen by 2 rupees 42 paise a litre during this period. With an aim to regulate online sale of medicines across India, the Health Ministry has proposed draft rules on sale of drugs by e-pharmacies. According to the draft rules, no person will sell or stock sale of drugs through an unregistered e-pharmacy portal. E-pharmacies will have to apply for the grant of registration through the online portal of the central government. With a single license in any state, e-pharmacies will be able to sell drugs all over the country. The registration issued to any person for e-pharmacy will remain valid for a period of 3 years from the date of its issuance, and a renewal of registration will have to be done. The details of patients shall be kept confidential and shall not be disclosed to any person other than the central government or the state government concerned if need be. However, sale of tranquilizers, psychotropic drugs, narcotics and habit-forming drugs have been prohibited through these portals. The premises from where the e-pharmacy business is conducted shall be inspected every 2 years by a team of officers authorized by the Central Licensing Authority. It would also be binding on the e-pharmacies to deliver the drugs in the specific time period that will be told to the patient. The move is also aimed to provide patients accessibility to genuine drugs from authentic online portals. India and Cyprus signed 2 memorandum of understanding on Monday as President Ramnath Kovind met Cyprus President Nikos Anastasiades. The agreements on combating money laundering and cooperation in the field of environment were signed after delegation-level talks in Nicosia. After talks with the President of Cyprus, President Kovind said both countries have agreed to enhance business collaboration in the field of information technology, tourism, shipping and renewable energy. During his address to the House of Representatives of Cyprus, the President said India is at an exciting juncture and offers appealing business opportunities. He then invited businesses in the Mediterranean nation to invest in India. He also thanked Cyprus for extending support to India's bid for permanent membership of the UN Security Council and membership of the Nuclear Suppliers Group.
We look to Cyprus for partnership. You can come as investors and you can come as stakeholders. You can come to buy or to sell. You can come with your expertise and you can come with your brands and your skills. India is open for business and India is open for Cyprus. Do come and come quickly.
And Vice President and Chairman of Rajya Sabha M. Venkaiah Naidu has urged all political parties to evolve a code of conduct for MPs and MLAs both within and outside the houses. He said the move will be imperative for effective functioning of legislatures and will also restore the confidence of people in parliamentary institutions. He also urged parties to transcend political considerations and speak in unison on issues of national importance. He said this at the release of the book Moving On, Moving Forward, which chronicles his experience during his first year in office.
On the occasion of the release of the book Moving On, Moving Forward, which chronicles his experience during first year in office, Vice President Naidu expressed concern about the functioning of legislators in the country. He suggested 5 reforms to improve the functioning of Parliament and state legislatures. These include Code of Conduct for legislators, both within and outside the houses, legislators to resign before changing party, and anti-defection cases to be decided in 3 months' time. Election petitions and criminal cases against political leaders to be decided quickly by special benches of higher courts. A national policy to ensure consistency in having upper houses in states, and cleansing of polity.
Political parties must evolve a consensus on the code of conduct for their members, both inside the legislature and outside of it. Otherwise, people will lose confidence after seeing what is happening at times. There has to, because after all, our system is based on political parties, Indian parliamentary democracy. It's not mere members, the parties, because we have whip and we have voting also, we have disqualification also on the basis of political parties' directives. So I hope at the earliest, all the parties come together. There's no meaning in this party has done. You say, no, they have also done it. And they say, you have done it earlier. And you say that you have done much more earlier. We have to put end to this and then come to some conclusion in the larger interest of our system and our country.
He also urged political parties to consider women's issues seriously and legislate measures to empower women through reservation in all spheres of public life, including legislature.
Political parties will consider the issues dispassionately and legislate measures to empower women through reservation in all spheres of public life, including legislatures. We must move towards ending discrimination against women on the basis of religion and other factors.
Stressing that agriculture is the basic culture of the country, Vice President Naidu called for a clear bias towards farmers and resource allocation to ensure remunerative farming and a robust food security. He also said that all efforts must be geared towards creation of cleaner polity and transparent people-centered governance. Kriti Mishra's report for Rajya Sabha TV.
Prasar Bharati Chairman A. Surya Prakash hailed the achievements of Vice President M. Venkaiah Naidu. He said that reforms suggested by the Vice President will improve the functioning of Parliament as well as state legislatures.
The other thing he spoke about was a code of conduct for members of Parliament. You see, when Mr. Shivraj Patil was Speaker of the Lok Sabha, in a presiding officers conference, I think it was in 1993, that he mooted the idea of a code of conduct, and that code of conduct was adopted by the presiding officers conference, speakers conference. Later, both houses of parliament adopted it in the sense that the ethics committees of the two houses adopted it. Question now is one of enforcement. That is why what Mr. Venkaiah Naidu has said today is very important. To enforce that code of conduct, you have to have the political parties on board. So today he has appealed to all political parties to please enforce this code of conduct among your members. It must begin with Parliament, and in my view it must extend to our representatives in all our legislative bodies, that is assemblies across the country.
On to some other news, the Karnataka Election Commission has announced the results of the urban local bodies election. The Congress scored a slight edge, narrowly winning a majority of seats across 10 of 22 districts during the vote count for 105 urban local bodies, with 982 out of the total 2,662 seats. The opposition BJP won 929 seats, with majority in 7 districts, including the coastal districts of Rupee and Dakshin Kannada. However, independents won 329 seats across the 22 districts, while other parties and regional outfits won another 34. The polls were held on the 31st of August. Time for a short break. News and updates will continue on the other side. Welcome back. You're watching News Tonight. Chinese President Xi Jinping on Monday sought to refute criticism that the massive funding under the Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative is drawing countries into a debt trap, as he announced a whopping $60 billion in new development financing for the African countries. The finances to be made under the BRI include $15 billion in grants, interest-free loans and concessional loans, $20 billion in credit lines, setting up of a $10 billion special fund for development financing and a $5 billion special fund for financing imports from Africa. The announcement was made by President Xi at the start of a 2-day summit of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, attended by the 53 heads of the African states and organizations. The Chinese president said Africa is an extension of the Belt and Road development historically and naturally, and an important participant in the initiative. China is investing billions of dollars in aid and projects, making Africa the most focused destination under the Belt and Road Initiative. But China's growing clout in Africa has drawn criticism that more African nations are getting into a Chinese debt trap. Analysts have cited cases of the Hambantota port in Sri Lanka, the Bar-Boljare highway in Montenegro, and the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor in Pakistan, pointing out that these projects, while being funded through highly attractive and concessional loans from China, are leading to unsustainable levels of debt for these countries. During a visit to China last month, Malaysian Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad had warned against a new version of colonialism as he cancelled a series of Chinese-backed infrastructure projects worth $22 billion. And for more on this subject, we're being joined by former Ambassador Dileep Singha. A very good evening, sir, and thank you for joining us on Rajya Sabha TV. Sir, Chinese President Xi Jinping's ambitious globe-spanning Belt and Road Initiative has come in for a lot of criticism. A number of analysts have now even termed it as the Chinese debt trap. Do you think China is using BRI to expand its geopolitical influence?
Yes, that's quite obvious. China is using this to expand its sphere of influence and to create a network or a hub of roads, rail and maritime routes, of which China itself will be the hub, to emphasize its centrality in the new international economic order that it wishes to create. The important thing to remember here is that while this scheme is only about 5 years old, it is already coming in for criticism, and countries like Malaysia, which had accepted this scheme earlier, has turned down 3 of its projects, and the experience of certain other countries has not been particularly good. In the case of Sri Lanka, they have had to lease their Hambantota port on a 99-year lease, which reminds you of the Hong Kong lease, which was about the same duration earlier. Then you have, in the case of Tajikistan, a border disputed territory was settled, and Tajikistan ceded about 1,100 square kilometers of land in return for a debt pardon from China. So this is clearly a scheme for expanding China's sphere of influence, but it is also a way of achieving an objective of passing off some of China's huge foreign exchange reserves, which are over $3 trillion, as loans to foreign countries. In addition, it creates capacity and gives projects to China's infrastructure companies. China, as you know, has extremely efficient and very good and very large companies which have built China's fabulous infrastructure. But now that China's growth rate is slowing down and its infrastructure work is almost complete, a lot of these companies have overcapacity. So these companies are being given projects, and they have already got projects worth about $340 billion in various countries. So China is taking its workers and its companies across to these other countries and building infrastructure in these countries based on loans that it is giving to them. And this is accumulating debt in these countries.
So besides the international
debt trap that we talk about, the world is talking about, and there was a report recently by the Center for Global Development, which is a think tank based in the US, comes from the fact that the repayment of these loans is a problem for all of these countries, because all of them have huge trade deficits with China. Pakistan's exports are only 1/10 of its imports from China. Sri Lanka's exports are about 1/20 of its imports from China. Now, if you recall, way back after the Second World War, when the US started the Marshall Plan, it was highly successful because the US lent money to Europe, but then it bought from Europe. So all European countries had trade surpluses with the US. So they were able to repay their loan and rebuild their economies.
Yes.
But in the case of China, because of the trade deficits that all these countries have with China, they have no way of repaying to China except by building surpluses with other countries. Now, other countries are not going to have sustained surpluses to these countries simply to enable them to repay to China. And the US, for example, is already grumbling that many countries have enjoyed huge trade surpluses over several years with the US, and it wants to set that right. So countries like, including India, for example, which has a huge trade deficit with China, but has surpluses with Western countries, is able to then balance its trade through other means also. And the same happens with Pakistan. So this is the main problem that is leading to the debt trap in the case of the BRI or OBOR, as it is otherwise often translated.
All right. So despite India's stand being clear on the Belt and Road Initiative, China has called India a natural partner in BRI. Do you think China is trying to woo India? And if yes, why?
Yes, China is under pressure from the US because of all kinds of trade measures that are being imposed by the US. Then there is also a coming together of many neighbors of China against China's assertive and expansionist policies. And China wants to ensure that India does not join them. Besides, in the network that China wishes to create for its BRI, India is an important part because India, for example, Bangladesh cannot be a part of the BRI unless the road passes through India.
Yes.
And even in the maritime Silk Route that China wishes to create, Indian ports would play an important role.
Certainly.
So China is very keen that India joins the BRI, both for the larger geopolitical interests that China wishes to achieve and also for the logistics of the BRI itself.
So one last question. Apart from the international criticism by analysts, there is also domestic criticism over BRI, especially over the excessive foreign aid by China to countries in Africa and South Asia and elsewhere. So do you think amid mounting criticism, the ambitious project could shrink?
Well, China's growth rate, as we all know, is slowing down. And this is creating some concern. China's foreign exchange reserves, which are very high, are still coming down. There is a lot of volatility in the international market. And plus, China, as I mentioned earlier, is coming under pressure from the US to reduce its deficit with the US. Now, all this creates a sense of uncertainty in China, and some Chinese experts feel that it would be unwise for China to pass on a lot of its reserves and its financial resources to other countries as loans, which may or may not come back, in which case that will increase China's vulnerability, because many of the countries that China is lending to do not have a very good record of paying back their debts. And this is a matter of concern, and this appears to be a matter of concern to some Chinese experts based in China who have voiced their concerns.
All right, sir. Thank you once again for joining us on News Tonight and sharing your perspective on the subject. Moving on, according to a United Nations report, India has made rapid progress in increasing access to sanitation in schools. A new study has revealed that between the year 2000 to 2016, the proportion of schools in India without any sanitation facility has decreased at a fast pace, leading to an increase in the number of school-age children from 352 million to 378 million. The report, however, says that a 2016-17 survey on menstrual hygiene shows only 2/3 of schools in India provide menstrual hygiene education with wide variations between states. The report further said that millions of children globally are going to school without basic hygiene facilities, and the goal of universal access to basic water, sanitation and hygiene remains a huge challenge. Pakistani lawmakers are set to elect a new president on Tuesday. The Election Commission of Pakistan has completed preparations for the election. Polling stations have been set up in all 4 provincial assemblies and the National Assembly. The tenure of the outgoing president, Mamnoon Hussain, will end on the 8th of September. He had declined for a re-election to a second 5-year term. 3 candidates, ruling Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf's Arif Alvi, the Pakistan People's Party's Chaudhry Eetraz Ehsan, and Jamiat-e-Ulema chief Maulana Fazl-ur-Rahman are in the race. And that's it from us in this bulletin. Thanks for your time.